Elsa makes landfall with Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia up next after making its presence felt here in Florida. What to expect in the hours ahead, a look at the impacts here in the Tampa Bay area, plus some meteorologist Q&A coming up next here on Tracking the Tropics. Hey there, folks. JB Buno here with you back in your hurricane headquarters. Elsa might have made landfall in Florida, but we've got a lot to talk about on this edition of Tracking the Tropics. We're going to tap into Facebook Live comment sections across the southeastern United States, especially in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Joining us from the Carolinas, WCBD meteorologist Megan James there on the right side of your screen. If you haven't been with us here before on Tracking the Tropics, maybe your first time, how this works is we'll look for hashtag Hey Megan, hashtag Hey JB, or hashtag Hey Ian in the Facebook Live comment section. If you use one of those hashtags, we'll feature your comment on screen and let you know what you can expect with Tropical Storm Elsa in the hours ahead. Tropical Storm Elsa getting a 2 o'clock update from the National Hurricane Center, and that's why we have meteorologist Ian Oliver standing by at the wall with the latest here on Elsa.
Good afternoon, JB. Yeah, we continue to track the latest with Elsa. You mentioned the landfall it made in the Big Bend of Florida, Taylor County. That happened with the 11 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center. And now that the system is over land, it's weakening, as we expect with tropical systems. Max winds now down to 50 miles per hour. Pressure up to 1,002 millibars. And its motion, still a pretty good clip off to the north at 14 miles per hour. Its center of circulation now is about 100 miles directly off to the west of Jacksonville. So the landfall location right about here, that's about 65 miles off to the northwest of Cedar Key, where we saw some big wind gusts. Still a pretty high-end tropical storm as this made landfall with those wind gusts in the 60 to 70 mile per hour range. This is the latest forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. As you mentioned, JB, the storm is inland, but the impacts are far from over with Elsa as it tracks across southeastern parts of Georgia into the Carolinas and then eventually all the way up the East Coast, losing its tropical characteristics eventually, but even moving through southern New England as a potent extratropical storm at this point. So folks all the way up the East Coast still going to be dealing with some impacts from Elsa as we move on through the next several days. You can see the spaghetti plots here a little bit farther west than we had seen in the past few days, keeping the system over land. Now, that does take away its energy source. Had it emerged out into the Atlantic, it could have tapped into some of those Gulf Stream waters, very warm sea surface temperatures that would have allowed it to re-intensify. We're not expecting that to happen, but you see this path here taking it over many populated areas all the way up the East Coast, the I-95 corridor, with some gusty winds and some locally heavy rainfall. So again, the impacts continue as we move on through the next several days. Thankfully, the impacts here locally were not nearly as bad as they could have been. This storm will be remembered as far less impactful than what we experienced with Ada at the end of last season. Number of reasons for that. We did see the surge, coastal areas. We had minor flooding. Surge was about a couple of feet across the area. Some isolated tornado warnings. Thankfully, we did not see any damage out of those. But really, it was the rainfall where we got really lucky. You see, entire portion of the Tampa Bay area got some big-time rainfall tallies, but the bullseye where we saw the most rain, 6 to 10 inches or more, was away from the coast, away from our urban areas, inland parts of Manatee and Sarasota County into DeSoto and Hardee County, areas that are more rural. Had we seen 6 to 10 inches of rainfall on top of places like Sarasota, St. Pete, here in downtown Tampa, we would have seen big problems with flooding. You saw that back on Saturday when we only had about 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. Across those areas, we had some bad flooding in spots. So thankfully, the worst of this rainfall did stay out of those areas, and coastal spots saw some wind gusts in that 40 to 60 mile per hour range. Essentially the tropical storm force. We can handle that. We were able to dodge some of the more major impacts as this system stayed just offshore. Right now on Max Defender 8, you got some spotty showers, northern parts of Pinellas County. These are gusty showers up the Nature Coast, Pasco, Hernando, and up into Citrus County. They'll be moving inland as we head on through the rest of this afternoon and evening. So maybe you got some plans tonight, perhaps. Game 5 is in the mix. Shower chances drifting over to the other side of the state outside of an isolated shower. Forecast for the Stanley Cup Final, Game 5. Big game tonight for our Bolts, looking pretty good. Want to talk about those impacts now extending farther off to our northeastern parts of Florida and into coastal areas in Georgia. That's where there is a tornado watch up until 8 p.m. We did see some isolated tornadoes across our area, and that threat is now spreading farther off to the north. We've got tropical storm conditions still possible with this tropical storm warning up across the Big Bend, parts of the Nature Coast, and then now extending up into coastal areas of Georgia, coastal areas of South Carolina. That's where we have tropical storm warnings in effect. And now we've got tropical storm watches as the system moves all the way up the coast from Virginia as far north as New Jersey at this point. So it is a far-reaching storm system. Still have a storm surge warning in effect for this portion of the Big Bend, essentially very close to that center of circulation where we're still seeing some higher than normal tides into this afternoon, but those thankfully should start to back off as we head on through the next several hours. So Megan, I know we went through our experience here dealing with the impacts over the last 24 hours. Now this system is headed towards your viewing area.
Yep, it is definitely headed up towards Georgia, of course, like you said, through South Carolina, here in the low country where I am, and up through North Carolina as well. And like you showed us, that track actually more so moving towards the Midlands, especially the Midlands of South Carolina, which at least for us here in the low country is a little bit of a breath of fresh air, because while that we could still see some flooding up in that area, I will say out of our whole region, that is the less likely flood prone area, where the low country, of course, it is deemed the low country for a reason. We're very close to sea level, very flood prone here. So having that track shifting up towards the Midlands, that's definitely good for us along the coastline, but something we'll want to watch for Georgia, South Carolina, even heading into North Carolina, of course, is going to be that threat for rip currents as well. Even though the system is passing more so on the inland side, still going to watch that risk. Not necessarily a safe situation out at the islands and beaches. And like you showed us, we do have those tornado watches down in Georgia, extending all the way up into Savannah at this hour. Here in the low country, we do have a low risk to see some tornadoes, see some severe storms as we head throughout the afternoon hours, but all things to keep in mind, all modes of severe weather that are going to be possible as the system moves on through, even though it is expected to weaken as it does reach the Carolinas.
Megan James joining us, everybody, from WCBD in Charleston, South Carolina. Rob Fowler, chief meteorologist there, was on the program with us yesterday here on Tracking the Tropics. Yeah, well, as we see some of the video here, this is from the Tampa Bay area that you're looking at behind Megan and myself. We'll introduce again here meteorologist Ian Oliver also joining us here, everybody, on Tracking the Tropics. And you see some of the impacts here in the Tampa Bay area. We're going to start to get to your questions and your comments here in the Facebook Live comment section in our meteorologist Q&A here, everybody. You can use hashtag Hey Megan, hashtag Hey Ian, hashtag Hey JB, and we'll get to your questions that are coming in here. And we'll start with this from Therese, hashtag Hey Megan, where in the Carolinas? And I think what this question pertains to, Megan, specifically is where in the Carolinas could impacts be felt?
Hey, Therese. Well, really, we're expecting to see that all across the state of South Carolina, through the Midlands, and even out through the low country too, even though, as you can see, the low country not directly in that path, but still expecting to see some of those heavier bands of rain pushing on through, especially the timing of that for South Carolina, seeing that between about 11 p.m. and really heading into 9 a.m. for your Thursday morning. So early for Thursday, that's when we expect to see the bulk of these bands of rain. That's what you can see playing out right there. And then as we move into the midday on Thursday, that's when that's going to be pushing up through North Carolina, still bringing some heavy bands of rain too. So of course, flooding is going to be something that we'll want to watch over the upcoming days, especially through those low-lying areas, the ones that are already flood prone.
Again, Megan James joining us here, everybody, from WCBD. Want to really let our viewers in those markets, those Carolina markets, if you're joining us from South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, really anywhere up towards the East Coast, the northeastern United States, we're going to tap into those Facebook Live comment sections here and get to your questions. Tell us where you are, and if you have a question, use one of the hashtags on your screen, hashtag Hey Ian, hashtag Hey Megan, hashtag Hey JB, and we'll get to your comments here in the Facebook Live comment section. Let's get to Daphne's comment here, hashtag Hey JB. Elsa's track is straight over my area, Nashville, Georgia. That's the southern end of the state. What will we expect there in Nashville, Georgia, Ian?
Well, the storm hasn't been over land for very long. We talked about that landfall happening sometime right around 11 a.m. It is weakening, but unfortunately it takes time as it moves over land. And we're still seeing what looks to be a low to middle of the road tropical storm moving over your area. So what you can expect, some gusty winds and some heavy rainfall as this moves on through. Good news for you is that it's moving north at 14 miles per hour. So unlike a lot of the storms that we've seen in previous seasons that kind of make landfall and slow to a crawl, maybe bring an extended period of heavy rainfall, this more or less is in and out across that part of the country.
Megan, what are you monitoring as far as Georgia up towards South Carolina, North Carolina here in the hours ahead specifically?
Hey, for the hours ahead, of course, we want to keep a very close eye on that tornado watch, especially that is stretching up through Georgia right now, out across that eastern portion of the state. Like I talked about earlier, that is extending up through Savannah at this hour. We're going to still watch that threat for tornadoes here in the low country too, even moving into South Carolina. But especially with this system, we want to watch those heavy bands of rain. I think that's something really important that we want to keep in mind. And like we've been talking about too today, is rip current risk is so high with this system. Even though it is passing over land out at our islands and beaches, of course, that is going to continue to be a threat. So if you're here visiting, enjoying our beautiful low country islands and beaches, the ones through Georgia, North Carolina as well, spectacular sights to see, but not safe days to be out on the water. You know,
we were talking about the track shifting inland here. Perfect segue to this next comment here from Debbie Lynn Chalker here, asking hashtag, hey Megan, is Aiken going to get anything? And we checked Aiken, one of the largest cities, if not the largest city, county seat of Aiken County in western South Carolina there. So inland impacts here, Megan, and I'll bring you guys both up for as far as western South Carolina.
Yeah, Aiken, South Carolina, pretty close to Augusta, Georgia. I'm seeing here on my map, refreshing my South Carolina geography really quick. Once again, the heavy bands of rain, that's something that we really want to focus on. You know those streets in your area that are low-lying, that are already pre-susceptible to flooding. I really want everyone to exercise good caution with that as we head throughout the early hours, especially of your Thursday morning. So tomorrow morning, definitely watching that. But this system, a big thing that we've been talking about, especially for folks in Aiken, you're going to see the impacts of this system overnight. Now, of course, overnight, a good portion of us typically sleeping. And if you do have any sort of severe thunderstorm warning, a tornado warning, you're really going to want to have a good, reliable way to receive these watches and warnings. Of course, you can always have your weather app on your phone, make sure your notifications are on, but a weather radio is going to be your most reliable way. Trust me, those things, they're going to wake you up if something's happening.
Ian, we talk about the importance of those weather radios all the time here on Tracking the Tropics. Part of that kit that you need to have.
Yes, and those emergency alerts that we've had come to our phone twice this week on Tracking the Tropics.
Yep,
so yes,
right.
Those are both very good ways to make sure you stay informed in the overnight period.
Tapping into a lot of Facebook Live comment sections to get to your comments here, everybody. And I see we have a few more in the queue here. You can use hashtag AE and hashtag HeyMegan, hashtag HeyJB, and we'll get to your comments here right out of Facebook Live here, everybody, as we monitor Tropical Storm Elsa making its way here, as you see here on Future Radar, making its way eventually up the East Coast, right where Megan James is joining us from in Charleston, South Carolina here at WCBD. One of the things that, one of the questions that we got a whole lot, we got asked a lot about over the last several days, the hurricane hunters making their flight into Elsa to provide us with this critical data. Ian, we were just talking about this off stream, about how incredibly accurate this forecast track was. We looked at the forecast track 5 days ago in the Weather Center, and it was almost perfect as far as the projected track for this system, going right past Tampa Bay, curving around Tampa Bay, and making a landfall almost exactly where it actually made landfall earlier this morning. And that's a credit to the hurricane hunters providing us with data and partnering, of course, with the NHC to then pool that data into basically all the formulas, all the math and science that makes projecting what a storm is going to do possible.
Yeah, I actually looked at the archive track. You look when this storm was still off to the east of the Lesser Antilles before it moved through there, briefly attaining that hurricane strength the first time around. The NHC 5-day forecast track from there, this was for Thursday 5 p.m. I believe, had that final center point, the 5-day forecast going directly off to the west of Pinellas County. So that was a remarkably good forecast at that time range. And this was a tough storm to forecast, not a well-formed storm with a well-defined center of circulation. It was kind of a lopsided mess. That's an additional challenge for the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center, and they did a really good job with the help of the hurricane hunters who provide a critical service. They fly into the storms, they give a three-dimensional picture of what the storm looks like, and that allows forecast models to have a much better idea of where the thing's going to go long term.
And I understand that you, a little bit earlier on today, something that we're getting ready for WFLA.com, the WFLA app, you conducted an interview with somebody who flew into Elsa here not too long ago.
Yes, an Air Force captain. The Air Force flew 9 missions into Elsa. That's in addition to all the missions flown by the NOAA hurricane hunters. And it was an interesting conversation. When I flew in Dorian a few years ago, it was a Category 3 major hurricane at that point. And I remember speaking to the pilot then and saying, hey, this is a major hurricane. This thing's probably going to be a pretty bumpy ride, isn't it? And he said, yeah, it's a hurricane, obviously, but really, those aren't the ones that the hurricane hunters worry about. It's actually the sloppy, messy storms, because these are some of our nation's best pilots and brightest minds, and they fly into these systems in a well-formed system that's symmetrical. You can really anticipate some of the drops, the turbulence, the wind direction. It's more uniform throughout the storm. These sloppy messes, it's kind of a crapshoot as you roll on in. They're just doing their best, and they don't really always know exactly what they're going to encounter. So he actually said this was quite a ride through Elsa last couple days.
Yeah, we've got Megan James standing by here to continue taking your questions. We got a lot of questions all of a sudden coming in, everybody from the Carolinas. That's coming up here next. Really quickly, though,
awesome.
A sneak peek, though, of that interview that's coming your way, everybody.
I had the opportunity to fly with the NOAA hurricane hunters into Dorian few years back, and I expected this was a major hurricane at the time, and I asked the pilot, is this going to be bumpier than you would typically see with a tropical storm or a low-end hurricane? And he said it's typically the opposite of that. With a messy storm, you run into some bumps that you don't expect. So what was that like?
The truth, that's the truth, really. Most of the tropical storms we fly tend to be bumpier rides. And it really has to do with organization. I mean, if you think of a major hurricane, particularly ones that are out over the open ocean, there's not a lot of disruption to it. So you don't get as much vertical turbulence, if you will, flying through it. So tropical storms, especially if they're encountering land masses or hostile atmospheric conditions, it really creates a very turbulent environment in the storm, which translates to the more bumpy rides. So Elsa held true to that. I would say one of the bumpier rides I've had in the last couple of years, particularly on my last flight on Sunday evening.
That last shot that you just saw there was one of the hurricane hunters pointing their phone out the window and just showing that was Elsa there at the very end of that clip. So fascinating, and that's coming your way, everybody, on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Again, an interview between meteorologist Ian Oliver and a pilot that flew into Elsa.
Yeah, quick shout out to him. That was Captain Ryan Smith. He's a U.S. Air Force hurricane hunter. So he flew into Elsa twice, 2 missions over the last week or so. Great guy, and I appreciate him taking the time this morning.
And Ian's got a lot to do as far as getting ready for our newscast tonight on WFLA. We'll let him go. Big thanks to Ian, of course, as always, for joining us here on Tracking the Tropics. Back here with you live, Megan James from WCBD. Megan, got a lot of questions coming in, so let's get to these as quickly as possible. I'm going to have to refresh some of my pronunciations here, but I believe that I hopefully I have this one right, from Clarissa here from WCBD's Facebook page. #Hey Megan, how bad is it going to be in Valdosta, Georgia?
Honestly, let me refresh my geography really quick and do a quick search on where exactly Valdosta, Georgia is located. I'm looking here at my map. That's actually a little bit to the east-northeast of Tallahassee, Florida. So, of course, that's going to be an area that we are going to be wanting to watch as far as that tornado watch being issued. Definitely something to keep in mind down there. And that rain, as you can see, the bulk of it quickly moving past that area as we head into your early hours of Thursday morning. That track, of course, sweeping through the state of South Carolina, right up the middle of it, really honestly, up the I-95 corridor, which of course is something that we've been hitting heavy here at WC as we've headed throughout the day today. And then moving into North Carolina as well, that's going to be something that we'll want to watch midday and later in the day as far as our Thursday is concerned.
We got questions coming in here, everybody, from Fox 46 Facebook page here as well in Charlotte. Getting to that next here, but really quickly, let's get to Joe Morrow here, #KJB. So it's north of Gainesville, and I think that with confidence now we can say, yes, that the center of circulation has moved north there. of Gainesville, Florida. How about Joyce here? Hashtag Hey Megan, will this impact Spartanburg, South Carolina?
Hey, Joyce. Well, of course, we're expecting to see a lot of these impacts really sweeping through the Midland, and the bulk of those rain bands actually stretching out towards the low country. So you guys do have the chance for rain. Not expecting to see those heavy impacts though in the upstate. So hi to our folks up there. Love our folks up in the upstate, but of course, Midlands to the low country, that's where we're really going to focus on the biggest threats for the storm. As you can see there, chance for rain in the upstate as this system does sweep on along across the state of South Carolina. But once again, low country, Midlands, that's where you're going to see those heavier bands of rain. That's where we really want to watch the risk for some flooding, some flash flooding, especially those low-lying areas. After all, like I said earlier, it is the low country for a reason.
Let's get to this one here from Fox 46 Charlotte's Facebook page. Amanda Rivenbark joining us. Hashtag Hey Megan. What about the beaches of North Carolina, specifically here, honing in on Topsail?
Yeah. Hey, Amanda. Well, one thing that we really want to watch for with our beaches of North Carolina is very beautiful views that we do have out there. North Carolina beaches, one thing I do want us to keep in mind is that as the system passes, even though it is on the inland, the track of that system at least, we're still going to watch for the risk for rip currents. So being out at those islands and beaches and being in the water, not going to be the safest thing, but Topsail especially, definitely going to see some of those outer bands of rain as the system does move along, heading into your Thursday midday and into the afternoon hours. Once again, here is our future track thrown on this as we sweep up through the state of North Carolina. So Thursday, that's when we're going to see the bulk of this rain for Topsail. And once again, it's going to be flooding concerns, but also rip currents. Those are the two main modes that I do want us folks in Topsail to watch for.
Tapping into a lot of questions here, everybody, for another 5 to 10 minutes or so with meteorologist Megan James joining us from WCBD. They're, of course, closely monitoring Tropical Storm Elsa now after a landfall event in Florida this morning, making its way towards Charleston, where Megan, of course, is located. WCBD's Facebook page, Fox 46 Charlotte's Facebook page, Wavy's Facebook page in Virginia, all coming up here next. Let's check a little more north here. Bonnie here asking, hashtag Hey Megan, I have friends and family in Connecticut, and I believe that's New Haven. How will it be when Elsa reaches Connecticut, Megan?
What we're going to see up there, of course, JB, is the rain. We're expecting the system to weaken as it continues to track up our eastern seaboard. So while the bulk of the impacts, the heavier, the more severe of those storms, it's going to be located more so towards Georgia, especially watching it there, through South Carolina as well. North Carolina looking at rain, still that chance for rip currents out along our islands and beaches. But moving into New Hampshire and Connecticut, like you said, looking for a rain event as it does continue to track up, especially as you get closer to that coastline. That's where we're going to see the bulk of the rain tracking, especially up through New York City as well, the Big Apple.
From WCBD's Megan James to WCBD's Brandy Noel in the Facebook Live comment section there. Hashtag Hey Megan. What is the tornadic outlook for Johns Island, South Carolina? Any chance for tornadic activity there, Megan?
Hey, Brandy. Well, what we're going to be watching for as far as our tornadic risk goes, we do have the chance to see a couple of quick spin up tornadoes, especially watching that chance for some water spouts as well. So Johns Island, of course, very close to the Holy City, some area that we are going to be watching for. We don't have a tornado watch in effect at this hour, but as we move through the overnight hours, that's going to be the time frame where we're really going to watch for the bulk of this, some of those thunderstorms firing on up. We're going to watch for some rotation within these systems. So something we'll be keeping a close eye on for you. And Brandy, of course, Josh is going to be in tomorrow morning, keeping a very close eye on the system. Rob, tonight, they have you covered. They'll be keeping a very close eye on the system, letting you know if anything does become a concern for us, a threat to the low country. Johns Island, one of those areas that we do have a risk for tornadoes. It is a lower risk, but we can't completely rule it out. So once again, like we've been talking about all day, just have a reliable way to get those watches and warnings.
We did have some tornado warnings here issued in the overnight hours for our Florida viewers that might have missed it. DeSoto, Sumter counties saw some tornado warnings, and there were some indications of rotation on radar, of course. And anytime that happens, of course, alerts go out to phones. We, of course, go on air at WFLA, and if the same occurs, and we hope it doesn't, but if the same occurs in Charleston, South Carolina, meteorologists like Megan and her weather team there at WCBD will going on the air to make sure that everybody knows to go to their safe spot and be safe for where that tornado warning would apply to as far as it being issued. Let's get to this next comment here from Mildred. Hi, Mildred, joining us from Fox 46 Charlotte's Facebook page, hashtag Hey Megan. What about Western North Carolina, please? Again, getting back to that track, Megan, shifting a little bit more inland than originally anticipated.
Hey, Mildred. Well, as we see this track here, we're watching that live on our screen. The most western portion of North Carolina, as you can see there, you do have the chance to see some rain, but the bulk still going straight up the middle of the state, through those Midlands, and out towards the coastline as well, throwing your rainfall accumulations on here. Again, seeing the bulk go straight up the middle of the state of North Carolina. So western North Carolina, you guys do have the chance to see some rain, but I want to say that's going to be our biggest concern, is just the threat for a couple of showers, maybe rumbles of thunder, but once again, the bulk going straight up the center of the state. So you guys are at least missing out on the brunt of this system.
This is the last call for your questions and comments using hashtag Hey Megan, hashtag Hey JB. Again, we lost to Ian Oliver to get ready for WFLA's newscast tonight here in Tampa Bay. So Megan, of course, answering a lot of questions here for us as far as impacts that are expected to be felt across Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, even into the Delmarva Peninsula. They're going to be expecting some impacts here in the hours and days ahead. Okay, let's get to this next one here, but really a last call for questions and comments to be featured here on Track in the Tropics. If you've never been with us here before, hashtag Hey Megan or hashtag Hey JB with your comment, and we'll get to your comments, and we'll feature them on screen. We're tapping into Wavy's Facebook page, WCBD's, of course, Fox 46 Charlotte, WFLA here in Tampa, where, of course, really Elsa in the rearview mirror now. But those Facebook pages, we're looking for your comments here as we have just a few more minutes here with you on stream. Maddie Maynard here asking, hashtag Hey Megan, what about Norfolk, Virginia?
Hey, Maddie. Well, that beautiful coastline of Virginia there, usually seeing a good bit of sunshine, but of course we are going to watch for Elsa moving up that eastern seaboard. And as you can see here with that track, of course, going through the Midlands of South Carolina, the Midlands of North Carolina as well. But as you get closer to Virginia, that's going to be making more of a push out towards the coastline. So Norfolk, you guys could definitely see some heavy rain with the system. Those heavy bands of rain is something that we're definitely going to be watching for. Thunderstorm activity as well as we move into our Thursday evening. That's when we're going to see that pushing on through. But one thing, since you guys, of course, are a coastal community with the system moving on through, I want to reiterate just once again, like we've been talking about for a good portion of the day today, rip current risk, that is of course going to be a threat as Elsa does continue to push up that eastern seaboard, moving over Norfolk. Definitely something that we are going to want to watch for.
I'll take this next one here from Rick. Hashtag HeyJB. Tampa Bay drivers need to turn their headlights on when it's raining. This drives me crazy because people will remember, Megan, to turn on their windshield wipers. That's, of course, a given because you need to be able to see, right? But it's a two-step process. If you have rain, everybody, and you're driving through rain, especially rain from a hurricane or a tropical storm, the two-step process is turn on your wipers, of course, turn on your headlights, make sure that your lights are on, and then really, if it's a third step process, make sure your seatbelt is on. We shouldn't have to remind you, of course, to wear your seatbelt, but those three things when you're driving through a storm, especially a tropical storm or a hurricane, or Megan, they're vitally important. I see it way too much, not just on roadways here in Florida, but really everywhere, people forgetting to turn on their headlights in storms.
I was going to say, if you're saying that's a two-step process, I was going to say go outside, see that heavy rain, and just turn around, head back inside. That's what I would do personally. Yep.
That's just get to a safe spot when you can. Let's see here. I think this one from Christian. I think we took this question here from Christian. We did, talking about Chesapeake, Virginia. We did, I think, Megan. I'm trying to
I don't think we've touched on this one before, but
okay,
Virginia,
Christian. So Christian here asking if there's winds, tornado threat from Wavy's Facebook page, Chesapeake, Virginia.
Hey, JB. Well, definitely moving up into Virginia, I think one of the biggest things that we are going to be wanting to watch for is that chance for heavy rain. But like we've been talking about, no tornado watches or warnings up into Virginia at this point in time. We're, of course, watching those through Georgia right now, especially as we're reaching that peak heat in the day. Here in South Carolina, that's something that we're going to watch for heading into the morning hours. But then as the system does get up towards Virginia, we are expecting it to weaken. Once again, heavy rain, the threat for thunderstorms, but also rip currents. Those are some of our main modes of tropical weather that we're going to expect to see.
And let's get to this one here from Dawn Snow asking about the Charlotte metro area, Monroe, North Carolina. Hashtag Hey Megan for you, Megan James.
Hey, Dawn. Well, as we're watching the storm tracking up through the state of North Carolina, the Charlotte metro area, of course, it is a little bit to the west. Took me a second there for my directions. A little bit to the west of the center of the state, but still going to see some pretty hefty rainfall totals. So I myself am not very familiar with the Charlotte area, but one thing I would want to caution people in that area is that with that chance for some heavy bands of rain, those areas that are prone to flooding, those low-lying roads, I would definitely take extra caution if you do have to drive across one of those. If you see that there's water over the roadway, definitely turn around. Not a safe situation to be in. So watch for that localized flooding. Of course, you guys who live in your area, your area like the back of your hand. So something to watch for, but especially those heavy bands of rain and some windy conditions, not expecting it to be damaging winds, but 35-mile-per-hour winds. Those are ones that you are definitely going to notice, especially high-profile vehicles over bridges. That's something to really watch for as well.
And lastly here, Jen Brown, just an appreciative comment from Fox 46's Facebook page, hashtag Hey Megan, hashtag Hey JB. Thank you for the updates. For us here in the Tampa Bay area, there's some cleanup to consider, but really Elsa in the rear view mirror for us after that landfall in Taylor County, Florida, now making its way up towards southern Georgia. And then it's going to, of course, move, as the National Hurricane Center put in that track, kind of move more inland through South Carolina, North Carolina, and up the eastern United States. Great to have Megan James on the program. Really quick, Megan, before we let you go, what are you going to be watching for here in the hours ahead?
One thing that we're going to be watching for, once again, I want to reiterate, we do have that tornado watch, of course, in effect for portions of Georgia. We're going to want to keep a very close eye on this, especially stretching up through Savannah. That's where that tornado watch is in effect for now. But as Elsa does reach the state of South Carolina, heading through the Midlands, making a clean cut through the middle of the state. But the bulk of those bands of rain, of course, heading through the Midlands and out towards the low country. Low country, we call it that for a reason. We're very low to the ground, very close to sea level. As you can see with this track here, we're going to watch for these bands of rain really entering the state 11 p.m. through the early morning hours of your Thursday. Now, one thing I do want to touch on that I have not touched on quite yet is, at least for the low country, as far as our tides go, our low tide, it is just before the 2 a.m. hour for your Thursday. So with that chance for some hefty bands of rain coinciding with those tides, at least, we're at least going to see that when we are at low tide. So it's not a twofer with this. At least our tides are going to be playing in our favor as Elsa does sweep on by the low country. And then eventually for your Thursday midday into the afternoon, working its way into North Carolina.
WCBD meteorologist Megan James joining us here, everybody. A lot to get to there in the hours ahead for the folks at WCBD. I'd like to thank you for joining us here, everybody. A friendly reminder, this is actually our regularly scheduled episode of Tracking the Tropics, featuring meteorologists such as Megan, such as her colleague Rob, and some of the many others that we've brought you over the last 24 hours, such as Jeff Baskin, of course, John Bernier. We tap into meteorologists across the United States here, their expertise, their experience, and we come to you live every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central during hurricane season, or when we have a storm to track, a storm such as now Tropical Storm Elsa. So we'll continue to monitor Elsa's progression here through the southeastern United States up towards the northeastern United States here in the hours and days ahead. But as a reminder, if you want to talk about tropical development, tropics education, we're here live for you on this app, website, or social media platform, Wednesdays, 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central. I'd like to thank WCBD's Megan James for joining us. I'm JB Buno. We'll see you next time, everybody, on Tracking the Tropics.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.